Hey, it's Tess, content creator, model, presenter, and host of the Tess Talks podcast, on a mission to ignite curiosity. I know, such a wild time, wasn't it? I got such an amazing response though when you spoke at my Tess Talks event, which that event we really focused, I think, around like empowering women and acknowledging the true beauty and power and strength of women, and went through all of that with you because that is a lot of what comes into your work.
Yes.
And the response was just honestly amazing. That's why I was so excited to get you on the podcast.
Thanks, huh?
And I feel like all of that.
A better one-on-one, I feel.
Totally better one-on-one. I'm so excited.
One-on-one.
Because I feel like when I come to see you as like a client, we still like chit-chat.
Yeah, we do.
get carried away on tangents and I could talk to you for hours.
I know, it's so good.
Yeah. And I feel like all of that, it really embodies what comes through your work. So you obviously specialize in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, but the way that you look and deal with your clients is on such a holistic, empowered and beautiful way. And you really take the care and the time to really understand every person you're working with. And I think that's really rare and I think it's really remarkable.
Oh, thanks, Tess. I mean, when you love what you do, I think it just naturally comes through really with your patients. And I think having that holistic lens really does give you a deeper understanding not only of the individual but then also what's presenting. And I do love both East and West, and I think when you can combine that integratively, that's when we actually have the best results.
Hands down agree. It's so important in this day and age to bring the two modalities together.
And that was like you were saying, you know, when you were talking about your parents and and how that sort of has shaped you as the woman that you are too, to be able to have that lens of being able to look at both East and West. It really is, we're very lucky.
We are.
Yeah.
So for those listening who aren't familiar with your work and your credentials, I guess, can you give us a quick little bio?
Sure.
The elevator pitch.
Isn't that 20 seconds?
That's right. Take your time. There's no rush here.
So I am a doctor of Chinese medicine specialising in fertility all the way through to pregnancy and postpartum. I also am an endo champion, having endometriosis and adenomyosis myself. So I'm really for bringing awareness and education to these types of conditions. And also I am a shamanic womb healer. So I have continued my studies sort of in that shamanic realm, doing ceremonialist training. So I think, that's kind of me in that sort of holistic lens.
Ooh, we're going to touch on all of that. I cannot wait.
Me too.
So what do you think it was in your life? Was it your own health journey that you just briefly mentioned that stemmed this sense of curiosity to follow this path?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always wanted to help people. So I did start off doing nursing, so 2 years of nursing. And then, of course, I ended up having my own health crisis. And so that is then what basically I started to seek out other practitioners and different modalities. And then that was what really sort of, I went and saw a Chinese medicine practitioner, and that was really what cemented for me. I knew at that moment when I went and saw Ken, who ended up being one of my lecturers at school.
Wow.
So we went full circle. That was what I was going to study. I fell in love with the whole Chinese philosophy and just enrolled into Victoria University, into Chinese medicine, not knowing that it was a herbal course, thinking that there was acupuncture. So
I mean, take it as it comes, eh?
that's it. 4 years of being a witch and doing lots of herbs, and then followed by another 2 studying acupuncture.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was it about traditional Chinese medicine that caught your attention so much?
I think it's the depth, and it's also that whole mind-body medicine is that nothing is separate, and that's what I love, is that it looks at the body holistically, the mind, the heart, the body. There's no separatism, and I think that's what's really beautiful about the medicine, is that it can go deeper and deeper. And what I love is it really is a long life medicine. Is that I'm always constantly learning, constantly evolving, and even consciously as well. I think it's definitely shaped me as a practitioner. I'm not the person that I was 20 years ago when I first started studying. And then the lessons that I learn from each patient as well when they come in with their presentation.
I think what's really interesting about coming to see you as a client is that the initial health assessment isn't necessarily that stereotypical health assessment, and that questions you bring into that moment are also around your energetic state, whether you're feeling stuck or stagnant, what's happening in your life. And I'm so curious to know, why are those questions so important when you start to work with someone?
That's a great question. I guess the thing is that we do look at it so differently, in that we're not just looking at your blood work. When you come in, we take your pulse. So by feeling your pulse, it has different qualities. And so the pulse relates to, the left side relates to the energetic side, and the right side relates to the energetic side, and the left side relates to the blood flow. And so the right side connecting to the lungs, the spleen and the stomach, and the kidneys, our adrenals, and then the left side connecting to our heart, our liver, and our kidneys. And so when we take the pulse, we're able to feel like if there's a hard pulse, that tells us that there's quite a lot of stagnation or blood stagnation within the body. If the pulse feels like you've got pearls rolling over your fingers, that relates to dampness. So dampness in the body can be things such as heaviness, weight gain, swelling. If the pulse is really fast, that of course indicates that there's heat and inflammation in the body. But when I connect in with the pulse, I go a little deeper, and I always ask that person's body to be able to show me what it is that I need to know. And so it's almost like a mirror ball of when I take a pulse. I can really connect in deeply, and having that beautiful reciprocity of that relationship with that person's body when I'm taking the pulse, it will then start to show me what I need to know.
Wow.
And you can feel the emotions, like in the lungs, if they're feeling quite heavy. We can say that there's obviously there's been sadness depending on what time they're waking up in the morning. There is a beautiful Chinese medicine clock.
How is it related to what time they wake up?
So each organ body has its own time through a 24-hour clock.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know this. Please elaborate. Tell me more.
So the kidneys is like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And then we come into the large intestine, the spleen and the stomach around 7 a.m. So 7 a.m., that's the time that we really want to be optimizing our breakfast, because the stomach is about assimilation and digestion. So if we're eating breakfast at that optimal time, then of course the stomach chi is functioning at its highest. So it's going to be able to break down and metabolize our food more efficiently. And it's that beautiful energy of earth, Mother Earth, because Chinese medicine also connects us to the 5 elements, which we can touch on. And so you think about when you have breakfast in the morning, if we're having a really hearty, wholesome breakfast, is that we're setting up our energy and we're grounding our energy for that day. It's like if we wake up and have a coffee first thing in the morning, we're spiking our cortisol, we're spiking our adrenals, and we're also putting our nervous system into that flight fright. And so when we come in and we sit down and we're not on our phones and we're consciously aware of how we're eating our food, then we're breaking it down, we're metabolizing it, and we're grounding our energy for the spleen and the stomach. So it's really, and then of course, if you're waking up around midnight, that's connected to the liver. And we know that the emotion of the liver is stress.
It's so fascinating. I think this is what I love about TCM the most, is how much energy is correlated to the body. And so the fact that organs hold and are correlated to different experiences or different energies that we're storing, I find that, one, incredibly empowering to have knowledge over, but two, just so important and fascinating, because we're energetic beings and we just glaze over so much of it.
It's so true. I mean, I think that's the thing in the Western world, isn't it? We've been so disconnected to our bodies so disconnected to ourselves that we don't even really understand the energetics, or it's just basically described as the woo-woo. But we know on a cellular level when there is that energy exchange through the mitochondria from that ATP energy, that is energy. And acupuncture is amazing because we are in the business of energy. And if you break it down, it's like inner chi.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. It's so, I love all those little hacks like disease, which I just spoke about before. Like, yeah, fascinating when you put all the dots together.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So what are some of the key points in the body that relate to different energetics or experiences? For example, you said the liver is stress and anger, I believe. Lungs, I believe, can be correlated to grief. What are some of the other key ones?
So the kidneys are fear, and you think where the location of the adrenals are. And it's also too, that's what I love about yoga, because you can tie in the base chakra, and the base chakra is about security, family, finances. And so when those things aren't aligned in our life, we start to initiate the adrenals, and we start to initiate that flight, fight, freeze. So we come into more of a fear state. The spleen is about worry, and the spleen correlates to also Manipura, the chakra, the solar plexus. And so that's when we generally tend to hold a lot of our emotions. So if we're worried a lot, then we're not going to be able to digest our food metaphysically as well, and not be able to digest life. The heart, of course, is joy, unconditional love. And then also too, so the lungs, we have the spleen, kidneys, heart. Yeah, so they're the major ones.
And so what's the general principle of TCM to work through those and keep that chi and that energy moving through these organs?
That's a great question. So it's about the balance of yin and yang. And so in Western medicine, we call that the balance of homeostasis. So the body is always trying to find a way back into its natural balance, the balance between the masculine and the feminine, or the balance between the yin and the yang.
I love that you said that, because I was actually thinking about this last night, that the masculine and feminine side of the body, because the way that I look at myself, and you can tell me if this is correct or not, but when something's going wrong in my body, so I'll give you an example. Currently, my left hip has been playing up a lot. I've also been experiencing breakouts on the left side of my face. The left side, if I'm correct, is correlated to the feminine.
Yes.
I also have a baby girl inside me. So I'm thinking, okay, yes, I have these ailments to work on, but one, am I potentially neglecting some of my feminine side, or giving maybe too much energy to the baby girl? I've also been very in the doing mode recently, in that masculine energy, work, maybe neglecting my feminine energy a little too much. Is that potentially correlated to why I'm seeing things on the left side of my body fail me? What do you think about that? That's my own analysis of myself.
Of course. I mean, our body's always in communication with us, and I think this is our guiding compass. And it's just, you're so tuned in. And I mean, at the moment, you are building a house, you're doing podcasts, you're in your last trimester. And so it is an opportunity, I guess, for you to be able to, take internal inventory, because it is connected to the feminine. The right side is the masculine. And, the fact that we know that we're probably doing a little too much. It's like, we have the answer within, don't we?
I know. Just keep ignoring it. Whoops. Till it's banging on our door.
Because how many weeks are you now?
I'm 32 at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So it is, I mean, in that last trimester, it is about coming into that deep space of nesting. So will you be in your new place by the time you deliver?
We just found out we won't be. Unfortunately, we're now estimated to move in like 10 days after my due date. So I'm not really sure how we're going to navigate that one.
Okay, we've got plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time to ground that base chakra.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just rolling with the punches. Go with the flow. Go with the chi.
I love that. It really is about going with the flow. And so with that as well, I guess one of the things that I did overlook is that we do have 12 major meridians. So the meridian system is also connected to the fascial system. And the meridians have both an internal and external relationship. So the liver and gallbladder are intimately paired. The kidneys, the urinary bladder. So it's like you have an internal organ paired with an external organ. And so
fascinating.
The external organs all line the outer edges of our body. So the outer of our legs, the gallbladder, our arms is the Sun-Jiao meridian. And so if you think about what our body is trying to do in terms of maintaining that homeostasis, it's so it can regulate the internal organs, but the external meridians are all about cleansing, releasing, letting go, large intestine and the lungs. So we take in the breath, we take in what we perceive in life, and then what we don't need, we literally let go through our bowels. We literally let go of the shit, metaphorically speaking.
Fascinating.
That's why in the morning we should be really having a bowel movement just around that sort of like 5 o'clock time in the morning. We get up. It's like it does access the kidneys, but we should be able to then have a bowel movement to be able to let go of our previous day.
I think what's so interesting about what you're saying too is that it's really highlighting how every part of the body is interconnected.
Yes.
And too often we probably focus on an individual ailment as its own separate thing without looking at how it's correlated to other parts.
Totally. Yeah. That's sort of how we've been, I guess, brought up, is that we have a cough. Okay, what's the root cause of that cough? And that's the beauty with Chinese medicine. The theory is that it does look at the Ben and Biao, which is the branch and the root system. So the branches represent your symptoms, and then the roots represent where that root cause is actually coming from. So we can't just take a Band-Aid, treat the symptoms, because we actually haven't targeted where that root cause is coming from. And that is what is so beautiful about Chinese medicine, because that's where it takes us to the depth of being able to get to those underlying root causes.
So what are some of the most like common ailments that you see of people coming in a society that's so preoccupied and disconnected and stressed?
I mean, of course, the first one is we do see so many patients dealing with just day-to-day stress of a nervous system that is completely dysregulated. And so when the nervous system is dysregulated, that, of course, will impact our endocrine system, being our hormonal system. And if we think about our alchemy centers in Chinese medicine, we have the lower dantian. That is what we call our alchemy center. And if you think we alchemize life, this is where our hormones, progesterone and estrogen, this is where progesterone and estrogen arise from. And it's also it's our creative center. It's where our creativity is birthed and born from, but it's also where we create life. I mean, this lower dantian, it is the portal. It is the portal to our rites of passage. And then we come to our middle dantian, and the middle dantian is associated with our digestive system, our gastrointestinal. Now you think about the modern age that we are living in now, so many people have gut issues because of the chronic stress, our environment, the foods, the way that they're spraying the earth, the crops. So it's like we're having to deal with a lot more environmental toxins, the products that we use. So there's just an overload. So many more parasites. We go overseas, we come back, we have barley belly. And then, of course, we've got our upper dantian, and this connects to our sea of marrow. So this is our brain, our thoughts, our hypothalamus, which is our major gland that regulates our fertility, the reptilian brain, where we come into that flight, fight, freeze, or we're coming into because the human body is designed to run away from the saber-tooth tiger, but also for creation. So it's like when we are in alignment and we are in balance, then these three dantians will be working harmoniously in that beautiful balance of yin and yang.
And so you're really working with the acupuncture and the TCM and the 5 elements. I would love to know what you were going to touch on about that before when you're working with your clients. Also Ayurveda is a big one, which we should touch on. Are these kind of the main modalities you're utilizing?
So Bella, that was working in the clinic, she was an Ayurvedic practitioner.
Yeah.
So Ayurveda does hold a very similar philosophy in the sense of they work with the doshas, the three doshas, but it's also to a balance of really about coming back into balance to find that harmony so we can actually live in nature harmoniously. So predominantly in clinic, we will use Chinese medicine, so herbal medicine, gua sha, cupping, acupuncture, and then also to the sort of like the lifestyle changes where we can bring in food therapy.
And I love that you touched on endocrine disruptors before, because I've been thinking about that a lot recently, but also since becoming pregnant, I've been super sensitive to different toxins and fragrances and things within the house. So what do you think are some like really common household items that are causing these like disruptions to our hormone system that we're probably just not even aware of?
I mean, it's as simple as our plastics. Like how many of us would take our plastic containers to work, heat up our food in the microwave?
Oh my God.
So you've got all those microplastics. I mean, what's even alarming now is they did find like microplastics in human placenta. So it's
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's disgusting.
It's right down to that micro nano level now.
They also found it in sperm, didn't they? I
They
think I read
did.
something like that. Oh my God, that's messed
So
up.
it's right down into our in terms of like biologically now impacting placenta sperm, which is for the formation of human life. So it's wild to think, but it's just, I mean, how do we avoid it, right?
Yeah. Do you have any special products or things that you do in your house to avoid like chemicals, or like do you avoid candles or perfumes or anything like that, or you just go with it?
No, we're probably quite anal. So we do have a Kangen water system.
Oh yeah, love.
And then all the products, I do use essential oils, but we go back to the basics of using bicarb soda with fresh lemon.
Do you use this on your dishes and your laundry?
Yeah, the dishes.
Yeah.
Yes. I haven't found a really good dishwasher detergent yet.
Yeah.
For the dishwasher, so I just use the most natural one that's available.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? Because I switched to using an organics one recently and my dishes were just not coming out clean. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to go back to the chemical-based one.
We did the same. I know. And I thought, am I going to be like my parents? Do I actually need to rinse the dishes now and then stack it in the dishwasher?
Who's got the time? Yeah, totally.
And so, of course, we use glass containers. And we try and avoid plastics as much as possible. And then, of course, it's even your cosmetics, going through your cosmetics and doing a pantry detox, cosmetic detox, and then all your shampoos and conditioners. I mean, it's everywhere. But I think when you're prepared to really go that extra length, I mean, you really do honestly see the benefits.
Yeah. It's interesting too that this is a really common thing to become sensitive to in pregnancy. And I've heard people say that it's because your baby is so vulnerable. It's like your body is pre-warning you how to protect your baby. So that's why you become sensitive to like perfumes or candles or whatever, because it's too much for the baby. And I think it's an amazing innate sign that our body's giving us.
Oh, isn't it just wonderful?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, no, now this is actually not okay for you to use. And I think it's that evolution of consciousness as well. And it's that beautiful change of, I think when we step into parenthood, we do want to become, we do become more conscious. So we're more conscious of what we're putting into our bodies. And also too, that goes for our children as well.
So true. Where else do you think we're going wrong in our like Western society? I know that's a big question, but I know you like to bring in like modalities from both Eastern and Western medicine, but I feel like we've got so much knowledge now, but we're still so sick. And why is this?
I know. I actually do think that question a lot. And I don't know, are we evolving or are we still sort of staying stagnant? I think it's great that we have social media to be able to create more awareness. But I think it really does stem from a disconnection to our bodies. We have so much intuition and we're not really taught how to use our intuition. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that I've really tried to instill with our children, is to really tap into what they're feeling and know that those feelings, if they're feeling a little funny, to sit down with them and to be able to really have those conversations, to be able to, for them to be able to then discern between what that feeling is and why I might be feeling like that. So we will walk down the street and we will describe energy as sunshine or as clouds.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And so on a Friday afternoon when we're walking down the streets in Paran, and we call it Freaky Friday.
It is a bit Freaky Friday. It's also Freaky Mondays on that Chapel Street area.
So it is with Revolver.
Yeah.
And so the kids will say, oh, there's a dark cloud. Can we cross the road? So it's getting them to really start to use their intuition. And I think, you know, the pill has so much to do with shutting down our biological feedback, shutting down our innate wisdom to be able to connect into those monthly ebbs and flows that we have missed that opportunity to be able to connect in and tap into our own wisdom. And I think that's where it stems from women.
That's a really big one. And I think as women, we are so prone to glazing over the true strength and power that our bodies hold and that our menstrual cycle holds. And as you talk a lot about different rites of passages throughout womanhood, what that holds. And we've put such these negative connotations on all these things as opposed to really honoring and worshipping what this body truly means and is capable of.
So true. Yes, we have, haven't we? We've really shut that down and then just push to the sides these initiations and these rituals that have been a part of history and so many cultures to just, like you said, just glaze over it. It's like, oh, if we think back to what our first experience was having a period, I mean, it was, did our mums sit down with us and take the time to explain what the menstrual cycle was, the power of having a period, the power of being able to procreate? Instead, it was, let's take you to the doctors. You've got your period here and take a contraceptive pill.
So talk to us about what the rites of passages are through womanhood and why you look at them throughout your work.
So the rites of passage are these beautiful initiations of women and girls into womanhood, into motherhood, and then into, I mean, the word is even disgusting, into crone.
Oh, yeah, the crone.
So when we first have our period, we move from a young girl into a maiden, and so that's our first initiation. And so maiden energy should be, it's like free. We should be out there experiencing the world, living as young girls, not having to worry about the responsibilities of what adulthood is, connecting with our girlfriends, being playful, crafting, all those beautiful kinds of things that we often don't get a chance to do. And then, of course, we move from puberty into motherhood. And so that's our next initiation. And it's really that birth of self into motherhood. And it's such a poignant time because there's so many things that surface. And I think each rite of passage gives us an opportunity to be able to reflect about what I want to let go of because I am birthing into a new person and what I want to bring into. And in the Western world, it's very much an isolation because back in the cultures, South American culture, you would do this in a village. And so you'd have your elders that would be there with you that would be explaining what being a young woman means now. And they would be sharing their wisdom with the young girls, and then the mothers and the sisters and the daughters and the whole community would be involved. And that is the same as we shift into motherhood as well. It's really a beautiful time to think about and pregnancy will do this, and I'm sure you've experienced this, that all the things that need to surface will surface. So our vulnerabilities, even just the way that we change physically is a big one for women to come to terms with. What was my relationship like with my mother? How is that relationship going to shape me as a mother? Am I stepping into fear? And so it's an opportunity to really reflect and take note and have a journal and journal through all these experiences. Because when we enter into birth, that is that beautiful moment where the portal, we're birthing our beautiful babies, but we're also giving birth to ourselves in that moment. And so as you hold your baby, it's like you are birthed as a mother in that moment.
A sense of like rebirthing in some way.
A sense of rebirthing
ourselves, or
yeah, that beautiful analogy, isn't it, of where the snake sheds its skin.
So what do you think are the effects of when we glaze over these important passages? Because I think a lot of other cultures are really good at recognizing this and we're not so much. And so do you see that glazing over this or going through even like traumatic experiences through these different shifts in our life correlates to certain problems?
I think that because we glaze over it, we start to look outside of ourselves. And that's where we have those really big knocks from the universe. Are you listening? And we don't see those little warning signs. And then the knock comes again. And that's where we sort of have those really big initiations that sometimes can either propel us in a really positive way or in a really negative way. And I think for me, that was, my healing crisis was I ended up having a heroin addiction.
Wow.
When I was 18.
Wow.
And I had a beautiful relationship with my mother, but there's been certain passages in my life where, I haven't had that guidance. And I think when we miss out on that community guidance is that sometimes we really can take the wrong path.
Wow, that's so fascinating. How is that something that you overcame? Because so many people, I assume in that scenario, can't find the tools to get out of it. And that's where it spirals and gets people completely and utterly lost and stuck on that path. So what was it for you that pulled you out of that?
It was playing state league netball. So it was always being in a team environment and having the beautiful relationships with women. And then there was just something deep inside my soul that said, you need to stop. And I'll never forget looking in the mirror at 19, thinking I have the whole world ahead of me, and look at the shadow of myself that is standing there, 53 kilos, completely lost. And you could see it in my eyes. And in that moment, it was like, it's either going to go one way or another. And when I saw that Chinese medicine doctor, he said to me, your insides are rotting.
Wow.
And it was like, I have this moment now to completely turn my life around. And so my mum and dad took me home and I detoxed, and I lived in my bedroom for 3 weeks, and I went through all the horrific side effects of what you see.
So hard.
And I'm so grateful for my parents to be able to and have a safe environment to recover. And so that was that defining moment of me and having that catalyst to go, right, this is what I want to study with Chinese medicine.
I think it's so beautiful that you share this story, because being in that scenario, if anyone is in that scenario, you can feel like there is no way out and that's it. Yeah. And so sharing your story is allowing people to know that their path has been walked.
Yes, and there is a way out. It is that we just have to dig deep within ourselves.
And was that something that you found you had to, in a sense, process and rid experiences of throughout your life, looking at how the body holds energy and experiences?
Absolutely, yes. I think that, the body keeps the score. So there's always little paths in, and our body's always talking to us. And so I think through that experience, and then also to having drug-induced psychosis, I had to teach my mind that what my thoughts were not my reality. And this is before mindfulness was a thing.
Yes.
And so that has given me a really good foundation in terms of being able to, I think, create an intimate and loving relationship with my body. So I do have the tools to be able to understand what it's speaking to me.
And it's probably why you are such a great practitioner, because I think sometimes to really be able to resonate with people and understand where they're coming from, you have to have experienced some of these things yourself.
You have to have been in the darkness, right?
Right? Yeah, it's such a thing. And that's why I'm a big believer of everything happens for a reason.
Same. I mean, and at the time you just think, oh my God, why is this happening? But when you can step back and have that bird's eye view, you can go, I understand why this happened now. And I think in clinic, that's why I can hold space so deeply for people that have been through a stillbirth, or someone that is walking the trenches of being on a fertility journey for 5 years. Is being able to really hold the space in a way that they feel safe and they can actually let down their guards, but then also to offer, a beautiful network of practitioners. If I can't do it, then I have, let me get out my black book.
Yeah. Your own little community that you've built around you.
Yes. Yeah.
So you touched on shamanic womb healing, and I'm really fascinated in this. And one, I think it would be great for you to elaborate on shamanism. But I think the womb is one place where it would very easily hold a lot of trauma. And I think as women, there are so many different experiences we can have that would potentially get stuck in the womb, if that comes from any form of sexual assault or relationship issues, if it just comes down to our negative self-talk or our negative self-belief around being a woman and a menstrual cycle. I just feel like there are so many elements that come back to the womb, even experiencing an abortion or a miscarriage. Yeah. Is that why it's so prevalent in your work and why you do womb healing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the womb, she is our portal. She is our gateway. She is our gateway to transformation. Our menstrual cycle is our little spiritual guide of teaching us how to be in the ebbs and flow, of teaching us how to be a woman, how to navigate those experiences of ups and downs. And which is interesting, because I had a conversation with someone the other day and they were saying that's why men do yoga, because men want to be able to experience what we experience on a day-to-day basis, which I thought,
fascinating outlook.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So if we break down the word womb, it holds Om. And so Om is the first primordial sound of the universe, of creation. So our womb is the center of creation. And so when we do have all these huge impacts of sexual trauma, negative self-talk, we know that then holds into our womb center. And so the energy of the womb, it's water. And so when we, it's also in Chinese medicine, it translates to the child palace. And in yoga philosophy, it translates to one's own place. So it's like every opportunity, every month, it is an opportunity to be able to come home into our bodies, come home as we release and we cleanse and we let go of that previous month of all the things that have happened in our life. A time to really just rest, be still, and be in that space of connecting into our womb. Because when we don't honor these monthly rituals, is that we notice those changes in our menstrual cycle. We notice those changes in our hormones. We may find that we have a little bit more painful periods, or our bleed may be a little bit heavier. So each and every month and through these rites of passages is that our womb, she is holding so much.
So do you think then skipping your period, as is relatively common on the pill or any other form of contraception, do you think that's doing us a disservice?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Of course, because it is shutting down our biological feedback system. It's shutting down our HPO axis, our hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. And that is what governs our hormones each month. It's also what governs our emotions. It's what governs our sleep cycle. It is essentially what governs us as women to be able to navigate our way in the world and navigate our world from day to day.
So important to stay connected with ourselves. And if we're shutting down that feedback system, it's like we automatically become disconnected.
Totally.
And I always think like we spend so many years as women running away from our periods and obviously wanting to fall pregnant. And then one day we just expect it to switch back on again. And I just feel like the body is far too complex and intricate to ignore it for so long and then expect it to work for us.
Absolutely. We are these rhythmical beings. I mean, we follow the lunar cycle, right? We ovulate around a full moon, or we have our period around a full moon. We will bleed around a new moon, or we'll ovulate around a new moon. And so we do follow the beautiful seasons and the cycles. And our menstrual cycle does exactly the same. We just have to look at those little details within nature, the winter season, spring, ovulation, summer. It's amazing how we are reflected through those 4 seasons and the seasons in our rites of passage. And it is really about that growth, birth, death, rebirth, all happening.
So what does a womb healing session look like?
It's really hard to.
Is it? Is it different with every person? Is it just?
It's hard to explain.
Is it like an energetic thing? Or like, what are you doing in there?
So it's hard to put into words, but it is connecting into altered states of dimensions. And that is, I do that using a drum. So the drum represents like the heartbeat. Women were also the drummers back in the day, that we would drum and gather together to be able to create change and to be able to traverse these altered states. And I think that's what's so amazing, because as women, we were the sages, because we could sit in the depths, we could sit in the darkness. And so I generally will set up a sacred circle. So I call in the 4 directions, and I have a beautiful relationship with each of the 4 directions. And then after that, I use moxa, and I go in and I ask if I can enter into the spirit portal, which is through the belly button.
Wow.
Our belly button connects, it's our umbilicus. So the umbilicus connects us to our lineage, to our maternal lineage. And so through that access point, it's also a portal. It's another portal alongside the womb portal. And it's amazing what comes through. I just allow to be channeled. And I think that's from seeing thousands of patients and taking thousands of pulses, that medicine starts to naturally evolve within you, and it gives you a deeper sense of intuition. So it's fascinating. Whatever needs to be cleared, whether that's something that's happened where there's a soul that's been fractured because someone had lost their life during a birth in a past life that then is impacting them in this lifetime. So it's going and retrieving soul portions and reuniting the soul with its whole soul self, because what happens is that the soul continues to look for itself in the lifetimes when we are rebirthed. And so similar things will happen in this lifetime that have happened in a past lifetime, just in a different way, because it's like we're always looking to come back home to ourselves, and our soul knows that.
And do you think lessons play out throughout our life for us to fully understand that lesson, and it won't stop repeating until we've really learnt or processed whatever needed to be processed?
Absolutely, yes. So we keep looping. until we've had to learn that lesson or until we've had to retrieve that soul. And I think that's when we as humans, we start to go, I think I need to look for something else. What I'm doing right now is not working. And that's then when we go and seek out other practitioners or different ways of healing. It's because the body is telling us, yes, I need to look for something that's a little bit more different. It's that push.
And I know that you really encourage women who are starting on a fertility journey to do something like a womb healing. And is this because so much of this influences our fertility but also the baby?
Yeah. So it's creating a beautiful safe haven. We do a womb blessing. So it's then empowering the woman to call in what she wants to bring in. So I fall pregnant naturally with ease and grace. So it's like the body can then hear, it needs to hear those affirmations. So it starts to change that on a cellular level, because for so many we attach to a story. Or we go to the doctor and the doctor says, you're infertile. So that's the only thing that you hear.
Yes.
And then that story builds around that infertility journey. So it's changing the dialogue. So on a cellular level, we can start to hear those changes. And then also too, so do a womb blessing. What was the other thing that you said?
The womb healing, or just whether it correlates to the baby and to our fertility, our contraception, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's certain things that need to be cleared, and we carry reproductive programs. So some of those reproductive programs are, my mother was a bad mother. I'll be a bad mother too. I am a breeder. So back in the day when women were we'd have to have sex just to breed. I don't deserve to have children. Sometimes we carry these programs. The planet doesn't deserve to have children. The good girl programming. So there's so many programs that we are carrying that we may not even know that are ours, but have been passed through the maternal lineage. And that's the beauty of the red thread too. So the red thread is what connects us as women.
Because is that in a sense what we're passing down to our children, and it's like through the lineages they carry through, and that's why I think lineage work is so important.
Yeah.
So that we don't relive experiences of our parents, of our grandparents, and so we don't pass that on to our children.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes a person could be the one that's carrying all the ancestral trauma, and in their life nothing is going right, yet they're doing all the right things. And a lot of time they are that portal that then has to clear the ancestral lineage. I mean, we're so much more than just our physical form, as you were saying.
Yeah.
We're these energetic beings.
Yeah.
that are carrying so much that we may not even be aware of.
So how does that look like for a man if we're doing, say, womb healing as a woman? Obviously, a man is also holding these experiences or these ancestral things. How does it work for them?
It's the same. I mean, Garth, my husband, he had a womb healing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he had a vasectomy.
Okay.
And and he was having, I'm sure he's fine with me discussing it, he was having pain in his left testicle.
Yeah.
So it was reuniting part of himself and reuniting his testicle back, right, to give him that power back, because he needed to reclaim that back.
Wow.
Because it was something that it was just, I didn't want to have any more miscarriages. And so it was like, I'll have a vasectomy. But the thing is, sometimes we just go and do it without actually thinking about what the ramifications of these things are. And it was like you were saying earlier. I mean, when I was 15, I had a termination and it was like a business transaction. I made it like a business transaction without actually even thinking about the sacredness of what fertility means. And it wasn't until I did a vision quest last year where you go and camp out in nature for 3 days and you have this beautiful relationship and you have no food and you just camp by yourself. It's the best thing a woman can ever do. And it's like...
Can anyone go and do this? It's like a workshop?
Yeah, anyone can go and do it.
I'll add this into the show notes. Sounds fascinating.
And you get to reflect on your, like, all these different things come up about your life, and you get to, it's like going back through the chronicles, and then certain things come up, and it was like in that moment, it was like I was camped under this tree, and she was shaped like a womb, this grandmother tree, and it was like, man's, you know, everything in this life, it is sacred, and we're not really taught about the sacredness of our fertility, in the fact that we are these portals that create life.
It's truly miraculous and it's magical. And when you really sink into it and you realize how profound everything is, I think it's when you start to really feel connected. And
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And I mean, you're experiencing that right now.
Yeah.
It's like your body doesn't have it's like there's no algorithm, right? It doesn't go, oh, the hand's going to compute to the wrist. It just does it, right? And to think about the intelligence of our body and the fact that we can grow a little human and it knows that this has to join to this, to that. It's fascinating, right?
So for anyone going through a fertility journey, what are some of the things that you would initially work with them on? They came to you.
That's a great question. So really important to be able to have a look holistically. And I think this is where Western medicine is amazing, because it is the intricacies of being able to look at the hormonal panel and be able to see what's actually missing. And then having a pelvic ultrasound, because that's amazing. It gives us an inside look at what's actually going on reproductively. How's the endometrial lining? How many follicles? That then will also tie in with your AMH and your hormones. And then also to having acupuncture, of course, and then looking at all the lifestyle factors, as we discussed earlier, about nutrition, sleep cycle, exercise, and then, of course, body wisdom of being able to educate women about the importance of their cycle and tracking their cycle, using a BBT chart, a thermometer every day to be able to see their peaks and troughs, to be able to pinpoint their fertile window, and, of course, to be able to really develop that deep relationship with themselves. And then movement and meditation.
There are so many things you can do, and I think we're really quick to glaze over a lot of these things before we think something is wrong and we should take another path.
Yeah. I think, I mean, we're not really taught, as we were saying earlier, right, about what fertility means. Fertility isn't just about creating babies. Fertility is really about creating a fertile life for yourself where you are thriving and you are ovulating and you are experiencing that beautiful ovulation, that summer where you are engaged in the world and you're wanting to be out there and be social and connected with your partner. It's not just about creating a baby. Yes, that's part of it. But when we're thriving, we're flowing in the world. We're part of the world. We want to be engaged in the world. And that is also too an evolution of our consciousness as well.
And I think it's also important to highlight that it's not just the woman and that so much of the man comes into play. And I don't know if this is true, but is it true that 40% of fertility issues in Australia are because of the man?
Absolutely, yes.
That is wild. Take some ownership, guys.
Sperm is also on the decline. I mean, they found microplastics in the testes, right, in sperm. So it really is now, it's a 50-50 game. And so it's really important too that, of course, you are getting your partner tested and you do a semen analysis and you do their hormones as well, their hormonal panel. Because they're just as much of the game, and it takes two to tango.
Totally does. It totally does. The yin and the yang, masculine and the feminine. It's the perfect balance always.
Babe, you nailed it.
You're honestly such a ball of wisdom. I could honestly talk to you for hours. But before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you to leave a little verbal entry in the Tess Talks diaries.
So this is just some poetry that I wrote.
Oh my God, beautiful.
I have a little diary at home.
Oh, I
and
love
it
this.
was after a conversation with a client in clinic about how we neglect ourselves and how we betray ourselves. A world carved out that teaches us to neglect and betray ourselves. I've spent most of the last 20 years finding ways to come back home.
Wow.
So I think it's really about coming back home to ourselves, isn't it?
100%. Very important message to leave behind.
Thanks, honey.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Tess.
Thanks so much for listening. If you loved the episode, please subscribe, rate and review. It honestly means so much and helps to keep these conversations going. And I'd love to connect with you. You can message me on Instagram or TikTok, and I've left all the details from the episode in the show notes below. I'll see you next week.